It was fun. I love this sport. I gave it my all. It's fucking crazy. I had a blast, and thank you to all the fans and everyone.
All right, folks, it's over. Anthony Joshua knocks out Jake Paul in the 6th round of their fight on Netflix.
Style that would align with a ring that size, a negative style, as we mentioned. It really comes down to the fan interest. Jake Paul is on a 2-fight stretch coming into this one, which really put his reputation on the line.
Boxing pros are reacting to Jake Paul's potential retirement after his shocking knockout loss to Anthony Joshua. Paul has suggested that once he accomplishes all his goals in boxing, he intends to step away from the sport and pursue a career in the NFL, marking a dramatic new direction in his athletic journey.
Fell after this, like legitimately, just to play like safety and just deck people. No, I swear to God, I'm about to bring hella ratings to whatever team I'm on.
Where would you want to go if you can go to any team?
Shit, the Browns.
So
I can run a 4.34.
He's the fastest man on the planet.
I got hands. I have the size, the power. I can knock people out with one punch. So why can't I play free safety?
Do you think you coming into the NFL would be the equivalent of like when an NFL player says, I'm going to try to box now?
No, because I played football my whole life. At the end of the day, it's coverage, knowing your plays, and then just being.
The boxing world reacted intensely to the fight, with former IBF fighter delivering a blunt verdict after the shocking knockout, posting that Jake Paul's career was effectively over. Duke McKenzie also weighed in, emphasizing how undersized Paul looked against Anthony Joshua, explaining that even when Jake threw punches, he struggled to reach AJ cleanly. McKenzie warned that continuing to take such mismatched fights is dangerous and could seriously harm Jake Paul's boxing reputation, urging him to put an end to it now.
Tried to throw a shot, he would lunge in, jump in, and because he was so short, he'd miss. And then he ended up stumbling over his feet and falling over. Sometimes in that fight, he reminded me of, have you seen that Kung Fu film called The Drunken Master? Except for he wasn't a master. As a Kung Fu guy walks around and normally kicks people's ass, but he looks drunk all the time. That's what that fight reminded me of. It was such a poor showing from Jake Paul. You know, I mean, it's a well-documented fact. There was a lot of money on the line. And I'm sure you, Max, as I would, and anybody else in the street would fight Anthony Joshua for 75 million. You just would. And the same thing would happen. And even after the fight, now the fight's over, you're 75 pounds.
Another former fighter, Chelsea, reacted passionately to Jake Paul's shocking loss, expressing blunt relief in a post that celebrated his defeat. Former UFC champion Michael Bisping also weighed in on Paul's devastating loss to Anthony Joshua, calling a masterclass performance. Bisping detailed how AJ's uppercuts and combinations caused serious damage, leaving Jake with no space to move or escape despite trying to run. He stressed that Paul took heavy punishment, suffered visible facial damage, and now needs proper rest and recovery before even thinking about future fights, as the bout clearly exposed his limitations against elite-level opponents.
In my humble opinion, because I'm a big Anthony Joshua fan. Of course, I've been a supporter for the longest time. A rather lackluster, unmotivated Anthony Joshua that didn't look like he was being particularly nasty, right? Yeah, a lot of the time he was out of range, and okay, it is hard to land a shot on someone that's backing up and moving away the whole time. And there was a lot of times where he had him in the corner and he could have thrown a shot. And sometimes he was telegraphing his shots. And anytime he did go in to throw a punch, as I said before, Jake Paul would shoot in and turn it into a wrestling match. And even when he wasn't shooting in, he was clinching a lot. This is boxing. It's not MMA, as we know. The referee should have done a much better job of getting in there and separating them much, much faster. As I say, it was the 6th round. I think it was the 4th round he got dropped twice. In the 5th round, he got through it. In the 6th round, caught him with the jab, then a glancing right hook. He goes down, and that was that. That was all she wrote, right? I did a live. There was about 9,000 people watching at one point. Nobody was particularly enjoying the matchup. Listen, okay? I respect both men. I respect anyone really that steps into the ring, okay? And certainly going up against Anthony Joshua, that was a tall task, okay? You know, metaphorically and figuratively, right? It was a tall task. It was a big job. It was a tough opponent. It was a mismatch, and it was, right? Jake Paul never worried Anthony Joshua once. He never rung his bell. He never caused any damage. He never had him worried. He never did anything. It wasn't a fight. It was a display of how long can Jake Paul last? Can he run away long enough to...
Former fighter Cabral's finest reacted to Jake Paul's shocking injury by reporting its seriousness, claiming Paul was taken to the hospital with a suspected broken jaw and suggesting it forced him into early retirement. Sean Jones also shared his thoughts on the brutal clash between Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua, pointing out that the fight was clearly real and not scripted. He noted that even though Jake suffered a broken jaw, Joshua didn't appear to use his full power, implying a knockout could have been far worse. Jones stressed how severe the injury was while crediting the fight's authenticity, saying it exposed the harsh reality of stepping up against a world-class boxer like Anthony Joshua.
People who were fully convinced that this fight was 100% rigged. Like, people said that this is a clown show, and they said, this is rigged, this is scripted. Okay, so now Joshua's won. What are you going to say to that? So was it scripted that Joshua was going to win? You see this whole narrative about, oh, the fight's rigged, the fight's scripted. That's illegal to do, and Joshua is not going to tarnish his legacy by doing something like that. Would Jake Paul do something like that? Maybe so, yeah, but not someone like Joshua. Come on. Now, to be fair, 80% of that fight was looking a little bit dodgy. It was looking like Joshua wasn't throwing as much as he usually would. Jake Paul was landing on Joshua. He landed a really strong jab that knocked Joshua's head back. He landed a couple of decent overhand rights. In fact, Jake was kind of the first one who landed the biggest shots of the fight. But this is the thing, anyone who fights, even on like a low-level basis, or who just does some sparring, will understand that when you fight someone who has got nowhere near the skill level as you, sometimes it can be a little bit harder because they're awkward. They're doing stuff that you don't really expect. You know, sometimes when you fight beginners, it's a bloody nightmare. Just like, you know, awkward movements. You're like, what are they throwing? You don't expect certain shots to come that do come. And then you fight someone who's a little bit more traditionally sound with the fundamentals, and it's almost a little bit easier. And I think that's what we've seen here in this fight. AJ has had an easier time with some fighters who've got like 40 professional fights with 20 KOs on the record than he did with Jake Paul. Why is that? Oh, because it's scripted. It's scripted. No, it's not scripted. It's just because Jake Paul is awkward and he's a beginner in relation to Joshua. So Joshua just took some time to figure them out. You could see Joshua was getting a little bit frustrated in that 4th and 5th round, but then he stopped.
That wraps up today's video. Stay tuned for more, and we'll see you next time.